Hello and welcome to the podcast of the Prison Officers Association, the UK's largest professional union for prison, correctional and secure psychiatric workers with over 30,000 members. In this episode, we look at the work of the Operational Support Grades, or OSGs. OSGs are the second largest occupational group in the POA, but have an extensive list of responsibilities, including vital roles in control rooms and on gate duties. Unlike many of their colleagues, OSGs also retain the legal right to take strike action. To tell us more about the role of OSGs, both in the prison service and in the POA, we are joined by NEC member Jackie Marshall and Secretary of the POA branch at HMP Hull and an OSG himself, Nicholson. I suppose the starting point is that when people think of prison officers, especially if they're not in the POA, perhaps even if they are in the POA, they don't always understand the demarcation between OSGs and prison officer grades. Lewis, could you perhaps tell us this range of duties that you and your colleagues in OSGs actually are responsible for and undertake?
The roles that we undertake, we cover all sorts of areas across the establishment, depending on where you work, obviously. We cover roles such as the visit centre, where we'll meet and greet visitors upon their arrival for their social visit. All those visitors have to undergo full safety procedures, which the OSGs are responsible for. We also cover our census correspondence departments, which is where, if families want to send letters to prisoners, which it's their right to do. All that mail will be censored by OSGs. It'll all be drug tested as well before then be delivered to them later on that day. We cover vehicle escort duties as well. So any vehicle that enters any establishment and exiting, OSGs are responsible for escorting and searching those vehicles. Contractor escort, any contractors that are coming to do work in any establishment, OSGs will be responsible for that escort. We also cover our, which I think is our most important area of any prison, that's my opinion obviously, is our control room. Basically, it's the eyes and ears of the prison, and we're responsible for running that department. And basically, without a control room, establishment would literally grind to a halt. So you need that. That's your cog of the prison, basically, to help it run. And one area which I would think, in my opinion, is the most least favourite task of the OSG group is our night duties. How often we have to perform them. Some establishments, we're doing them every 4 weeks, which I think is it's a bugbear for a lot of the OSG group across any establishment.
When the OSGs are on nights on the wings, they become our firefighters. Should there be a fire, we rely on those OSGs to initially deal with the fire and raise the alarm to get staff to help them. They deal with prisoners who are sometimes quite irate or in need. So they can be a counsellor, sometimes be the mum or act as the mum, sometimes be or act as the dad, because they're the ones that help them. And obviously, if we have got prisoners who are prone to self-harm, and we have to check those, it's the OSGs who are checking those prisoners through the night. And should a prisoner try to seriously harm themselves, it would be the OSG would be the first person to go into that cell and try and help the prisoner. So there is a huge responsibility on them. And just going back to other roles that they do, we've got the care team. So care team are a group of staff who can help staff when they're in need. If there's been a serious incident, they can sit and talk to them. If they need help with other things, they've got the care team they can turn to. And some of our OSGs are members of the care team. And something else that they do as well, should we have a major incident ongoing in another establishment, quite often OSGs will be called in to drive the vehicle for staff to actually go and help out at that establishment. We call them tornado drivers. So they will also be called in to do that, which again is a huge responsibility because the staff in that establishment where there is an incident are relying again on other staff to come and help them. And the OSGs play a big part in that as well.
I think Jackie's just covered it there with just some of the stuff and responsibilities that we've got additionally to our own jobs. We've got a few OSGs on our branch that are part of that care team as well. And it's good that We have the OSG bank that feels that they can do that type of job. Because, again, the responsibility that sits with the care team is quite a big task. Very much like the POA committee, you've got people coming to you all the time for advice and guidance. So it's good that we've got OSGs on the care team as well, because I think it's good to have the care team represented right from Band 2 grades to right up to Band 5 grades. I think it's good.
Thank you very much. Jackie, the OSGs, as Lewis has just described, clearly play a vital role in the efficient functioning, in the functioning full stop of the prison estate. I mean, Lewis has touched on the night duty cover. What are the other main issues that are facing this group of the POA's membership?
Pay is a major issue because they are our lowest paid members and they deserve far more than they get, because without OSGs, every prison would come to a standstill. They look after the weak link in every prison, which is the gate area, because it's the only access to the outside world. And it's really important that that's kept secure all the time, and OSGs cover that and keep it secure. And as Louis says, when they cover in the comms room or the control room, we rely on the OSGs there. Should we need help, it's them that are going to get us that help. You know, we press an alarm bell, it's the OSGs in the control room who direct the staff to where that help's needed. And without that, we'd be in far more danger than we are on a daily basis at the moment.
The more we get into this discussion, the more integral to the safe and efficient running of the prison estate OSGs are seen to be. You mentioned the pay issue, Jackie. Now, Lewis, I understand about a year ago there was an indicative ballot amongst OSGs to test the water because, of course, OSGs, unlike prison officers, do have a legal right to take industrial action. What was the result of that indicative ballot, and how has the mood changed since then, if at all?
I'm led to believe it was voted quite positively across the estate. I know certainly at my establishment, we all voted in favour of potential industrial action should we get to that stage. In my opinion, I think it's something that we need to do. Because I think sometimes the prison service think it will just sort of like go away sometimes. And I think like Jackie said, if we was to go out on industrial action, the prison would just come to a standstill. You'd have no visits ongoing. You'd have no one operating the control room, if you really want to look at it like that. Our visit centres, everything would just stop. And I think it did test the waters quite a lot, I think, because management were asking me questions, certainly the rest of the committee, saying what we're going to do when the OSGs move up to the front of the prison. I said, well, we've had no direction as yet as to where that's going to go. But it just showed you the unrest that it did cause, just that note that we might be going on potential industrial action. So I think it set the imaginations going of where we might end up. But I think it's something we do need to move to if we don't improve pay and stuff like that. That's just, again, my opinion.
Understood it. You're just expressing a personal view there, Lewis. Jackie, what are the sorts of recruitment and retention issues that we're facing in the OSG grades?
Very similar to the officer grades retention issues we've got. Like I said, they are the lowest paid, and for the responsibility that they take on, it's really not good enough. We've got, in some prisons, we've got major absences of OSGs. There's one of mine that's today 30 OSGs short. The OSGs are normally the second biggest group of staff that we've got in an establishment behind the officer group. So when they are short like that, the department will bring in agency workers, which is costing them more, or a lot of the time they'll actually pay officers to cover OSG work, it's just wrong because they're using, the public purse to cover their shortfalls.
Which just makes no sense really in straight economic terms or being responsible with public finances, I guess. Is the union getting a reasonable response, do both of you feel, from say, the Ministry of Justice at the moment when it comes to actually getting around the table to talk about these issues? Or is there still a kind of a need for ministers particularly to wake up and smell the coffee on this one?
Yeah, I do, yeah. And I think that covers a lot of prison grades as well. I just don't necessarily think that's OSGs. I think pay is always going to be a factor where we always think we need more. And I think we do need paying for more what we do, because I think sometimes the government think, I touched on this earlier, I just sometimes think the government think it's going to go under the rug and just die a death. And that's not the case at all. We deserve better pay for what we do. Because, like Jackie touched on this earlier, the responsibility we've got in, say, our control room. And night duty is looking after, say, 130 prisoners to one wing. There might be a lot behind the door, but that responsibility that we've got there it's unbelievable. And I think the government needs to get around the table with the union and think, how can we improve staff retention? How can we do better by the staff that work within the prison service?
Indeed. And Jackie, the prospects of that coming to pass are, how would you rate them on a scale of 0 to 100?
Well, we want separate talks about OSG pay because they're currently falling under the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, with when they put compensationary measures in, when they took our right to strike away from us. Now, OSGs have got the right to strike. Officers and above don't have the right to strike because we have the powers of a constable. So within the prison setting, we police the prison. So if police officers come into prisons, they can't use their powers unless the governor allows them to do so, which is the difference between OSGs and officers pay-wise. So there's no need at all for the OSGs to fall under the restrictions that we've got on officers and above. So should we have proper talks with the department, away from the Prison Service Pay Review Body, about OSG pay, I think we'd have more successful outcomes than we've got now.
Okay. Are there other particular issues, Lewis, or particular incidents that kind of you've been involved in, or that you know others have been involved in, which if you had Dominic Raab in front of you, you could say that's why we need to be paid more?
Yeah, I mean, an example I will give, and this goes back a few years ago now, but it does involve our control room. We had an incident a few years ago where we had a prisoner out on exercise yard that snapped some of the exercise yard fence off, and he ran back into the wing and he stabbed another prisoner in the neck. And, you had to be there to see how obviously bad it was, but to see some of the work that took place in our control room that day. And in my opinion, again, the way the OSGs acted on that day, if we didn't act the way we did, that prisoner would have lost his life. And just that type of work, to see that going on behind the scenes, what not everyone always sees. I would openly sit there to Dominic Raab and say, look, this is why we need paying more, because that's the type of work we're doing behind the scenes, which sometimes they don't see.
Looking more at the internal POA dynamics, obviously, Lewis, you are the secretary of your branch at HMP in Hull. Are many of your fellow OSG members also branch officers?
On our branch committee, I'm obviously, like you said, the branch secretary, and I'm the only current member of the OSG group on our branch committee here.
We do have some other branches where they've got OSGs as part of the committee. Our rules and constitution allow our local branches to co-opt an OSG onto the committee so that they can deal with OSG issues.
The POA has established a consultative committee for operational support grades. This has become a valuable forum in terms of sharing information and views, as Jackie and Lewis tell us now.
Obviously, like everything else, with the pandemic, all meetings were put on the back burner and we just getting them up and running again before. Now, I was previously the chair of the OSG Consultative Committee when Lewis was a member then before, and we actually produced a newsletter, and the committee decided to call it only an OSG, because very often that's what they get referred to, you're only an OSG, rather than looking at the important things that they do. But in the newsletter, it was all information from OSGs putting together different types of things of how they felt as OSGs, the type of work that they did. And that was received quite well as far as I know. And I'm sure, Lewis, you will have had comments from Hull OSGs as how it was received there.
Lewis, from your perspective, how's the consultative committee been working both pre-pandemic and post?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been working really, really good. Like Jackie said, it's been delayed, obviously, due to the COVID pandemic. But now we're back to that face-to-face stuff. Hopefully we can, get around the table again and start discussing various OSG issues. And I think, like Jackie touched on it earlier, you don't have to be on the branch committee at your local establishment to be part of this National Consultative Committee. What I like about it the most is the fact that you've got NEC members on there, you've got branch committee members like myself and other OSGs who don't want to be part of the branch committee, but we can all come together and have them different opinions and get feedback from each other and what we can take back to our own establishments. But I'm hoping as we're moving to a new year, we can get around the table again and get them meetings back up and running.
Just one more thing. I think the biggest problem with our staff above the E grade of an OSG is they don't actually know or understand the role of the OSG. Because many moons ago, most of those jobs that OSGs now do, officers did, or in control of the gate, there were senior officers in control of a lot of gates, or you had to have 10 years service in to be IC of the gate, whereas now it's just, they've put that down now to an OSG grade, like I say, with a huge responsibility. But I think there should be more training for our officers and above in the role that the OSGs do. I know certainly at my establishment, when I was branch chair, when we had staff training days on, then we would put officers into the gate as part of that training day. Obviously, with OSGs, we couldn't just put the officers in there straight away because they didn't know how the gate was running. And the same in the control room. And it does open their eyes when they see the responsibility that the OSGs have got.
And we've just had an officer that just recently regraded to an OSG due to medical reasons. And obviously he's been trained in the appropriate tasks. And he, by the time he'd finished his 3-week induction, he said to me, I cannot believe how much work you actually do and how much people can't see what actually goes on your group. It's something that needs to be highlighted more than it is. Whether the prison service want to address that in the future remains to be seen.
Lewis, I suppose actually there are some OSGs who may not be members of the POA, which seems very strange to me. But if they are listening to this, why should they join?
Any workplace organisation, such as if you're working for the police, NHS or the prison service, a big organisation like this, you need a union behind you, 100%. And, for our OSG grades, like Jackie said earlier in the podcast, the responsibility we've got on nights, if should there be a death in custody and you have to go to coroner's court, and should there be a conflict with the prison service, you've got that full backing of the POA legal department that could accompany you to that hearing. I always think of joining the POA, it's like an insurance policy. You might go through your entire service and not need it, but I always think it's best to have it there just in case you need it. Thankfully, in my establishment, we've got nearly every single OSG that's part of the POA, and obviously I encourage everybody to join, whether you're an OSG, prison officer, custodian manager, whoever it is. Because again, there's always that thing, you never know when you're going to need it. It's best to have something than not have it at all, in my opinion.
And I suppose the other important thing is, without the POA, OSGs don't really have a voice, do they?
That's exactly it. And like I said, even though you don't have an OSG always on the branch committee, like Jackie said, if someone's co-opted onto that committee for advisory reasons, people can always go to them for advice and guidance, who can then take it to their branch committee for them to action. But I do think we need to do some more work about encouraging OSGs onto branch committees and getting more OSGs as part of the POA, because I sometimes think that ranks sometimes they're underrepresented, even though I personally don't believe they are. But it's about getting that work done to encourage more people to join.
My thanks to Lewis Nicholson and Jackie Marshall for their candid and clear contributions. If you want to know more about the work of the OSG Consultative Committee, you can contact Jackie or the committee chair, NEC member Jeff Willits, at the POA's head office, Cronin House. However, the message from Jackie and Lewis is clear. OSGs are a vital part of the prison service and a valued part of the POA, but as is always the case, the strength of the union voice is directly connected to the health of the union's membership figures. So irrespective of your grade, if you are not yet a member of the POA, sign up today by talking to your local POA representative or visiting poauk.org.uk, where you can find details of how to join and all the information you need on the work the union does on supporting OSGs and everything else as well. Thank you for listening. We hope you have enjoyed what you have heard and will join us for the next episode of the POA podcast. Thank you and